Hi, welcome back to Focal Point on AFR Talk, this Thursday edition. I'm Brian Fisher, your host. This is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. The network is the American Family Radio Talk Network, AFR Talk. Honored to welcome into our Focal Point studio Kirby Anderson. He's the host of the program Point of View, which you can hear right here on the AFR network. Kirby, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Good to be with you. And we've been certainly talking about surveillance today, so let's see if they'll surveil us here.
Yeah, I think you spent about an hour and a half talking with Tim Wildman on today's issues about the whole issue of surveillance. So I want to visit that with you. A lot of people who are listening on this are probably familiar with what has happened. This is a story, by the way, that was broken by the London press. You look at these four scandals that we're dealing with. You've got the IRS scandal. You have the Department of Justice going after Associated Press and James Rosen of Fox News. You've got the Benghazi talking points being changed. And now you've got this domestic surveillance scandal. And ladies and gentlemen, not one of these scandals was broken by the mainstream media. If there was ever a circumstance that verified the need for alternative talk radio, that's it right there. Not one. I mean, it used to be that this would be the job of journalists in the mainstream media to break these stories. Not one of these scandals has been broken by the mainstream media. So, Kirby, it just tells me we need networks like American Family Radio Talk Network. We need programs like Point of View. We need programs like Focal Point, because there's no other place for people to go to get news and perspective and information they can trust.
Because lots of times, as you said, the stories are not broken except in the alternative media, but then to keep the story going, because after a while, certainly some people have been focusing on Benghazi, but the only people that kept the Benghazi scandal going were talk radio and Fox News. So it's not just whether or not you know about the story, it's whether or not you understand the significance of the story. And if you go to the IRS scandal, that's a better example, because over the last three plus weeks, every single day, Brian, I'm sure you've noticed, it's like a drip, drip, drip. We find out something else. First, it's not just a few rogue agents in Cincinnati. It's quite a number of different offices. It's not just a half a dozen. Now it's up to 500. It isn't just Tea Party groups, but it's even pro-life groups. It's Second Amendment groups, even Jewish groups. And I think the Verizon story is a good example. It's just breaking today, but the bottom line is, I'll make a prediction. I'll crawl out on a limb. I suspect before it's all through, we'll find out that there's a huge database of the phone records of the people listening to this program today.
And what Kirby's talking about, and you are probably aware of this by now, again, broken by the British press, a story in the London Guardian, indicating that the federal government, our federal government, has been collecting literally millions and millions of phone records from ordinary American citizens from Verizon. Now, apparently, there's some indication AT&T may have coughed up some of this information.
Probably.
But I'm looking here at a piece, Kirby, from the New York Times, and it's interesting to me how the mainstream media sort of dragged into this thing kicking and screaming. But here's the New York Times, first paragraph of their story today. The Obama administration, and that was to me significant, Kirby.
They made it very clear, didn't they?
This is Obama. They're connecting the dots right back to President Obama. They've been trying to build this firewall.
They could not help themselves on this one. They just know too many of their readers out there are really upset about this, because this is one time, Brian, where I honestly think we can link hands with some of our civil libertarian friends and ACLU, because how many times do people in American Family Radio and the American Civil Liberties Union have agreement? Very rarely, but this is one of those times where the liberal senators right now are the ones most upset about this. So this is good news. And the New York Times is writing it as if it came from One News Now.
Yeah,
right?
And they use the word secretly.
Yes.
It's the Obama administration. They are secretly carrying out. So that's not a good word to have in the first line of a story in the New York Times. And they refer to it as a domestic surveillance program. Nobody likes that. Domestic surveillance, that's our own government spying on us. So this is the New York Times. So it seems to me like, the horse may be out of the barn on this deal.
Yeah, and again, the point we want to make is that they had to go to a court. It's not a federal court. It's a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. So it's a FISA request. And
now, let me stop you right there, because that is a key part of the deal here.
Yeah,
the first word,
Foreign.
Foreign.
But any call that you, if you're a Verizon caller, made, not only to overseas, but even in the country, you have your phone records. Now, they don't have everything. They know who called and who you called and when you called and how long you called. But that's quite a lot of information. You know, if I could figure out how many times a day you called your wife or how many times you called somebody else, or if you called somebody in the State Department, I could pretty much figure out who you are and what you're doing and what you're all about. And that's exactly why they've been able to subpoena those records. And so I think, as you said, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court is the one that gave them the permission to then obtain all those records. And now that's in a database.
And this has got nothing to do with foreign anything. I mean, the order itself, I got a piece here from Forbes.com. The order specifically states that only data regarding calls originating in America are to be handed over, not those between foreigners. NSA's spying goes beyond foreigners to include Americans, despite its charter specifically disallowing surveillance of those within the United States. So this is the NSA, National Security Agency. Their task is to do foreign intelligence, gather foreign intelligence. Here they are spying on our own people.
Very true. And again, you've got to understand that this is in the broader context. You've already talked about the other scandals, and even before we were going to talk about surveillance today with Tim, and this story broke, we had all these others. We have students in Florida where they've done iris scans to track them. There have been some students that have been chipped. This Monday, we had the Supreme Court saying that I could collect your DNA if you've ever been arrested and put that in a database of DNA. Of course, we've got all the different cameras up checking on us right now. And by the way, the IRS seems to want to know a lot more about us these days. And so this is part of a huge number of scandals that are surfacing, a lot of them having to do with the issue of surveillance. And this is why I think we need to really make sure in this next election we vote for the right people, people that indeed have character, have integrity. We also need to have some kind of checks and balances because as we're seeing now, Brian, you know as well as I do, the bureaucracy, the fourth branch of government, which I talk about today in one of my commentaries, is so big and large that even liberals, people like Jonathan Turley are writing in the Washington Post, I'm really concerned about the future of our government. And these are liberals saying this.
And I think Turley is actually, hasn't he called on Holder to resign?
Yes, he certainly has.
Remember that correctly?
Yeah, left-leaning George Washington law professor.
Left-leaning guy.
Yeah.
Well, and you talked about Democrats coming out criticizing this latest scandal, this phone scandal. Mm-hmm. Got a piece from Politico here, which leans left. So you have Senate Majority Whip Dick Durbin. He is troubled by it. That's his word. Outrageous breach. That's Senator Jeff Markley from Oregon. Senator Mark Udall, a Democrat from Colorado. The report concerns me. So you got one after another, even of these Democrats that are coming saying, well, this is bad news.
Ron Wyden of Oregon, certainly, and of course, Dianne Feinstein. But Wyden and Udall actually have written to the Attorney General. And, of course, I don't know that the Attorney General is going to stay around much longer. But, Brian, we can figure that out another day. But it does seem to me that this is something where once I think the American people really understand how far this goes, maybe Benghazi was a little too foreign, maybe a little too complex, maybe even getting the phone records of the Associated Press, well, I don't know, or of James Rosen. The IRS certainly got their attention with the 501c3 and 501c4. But this one may be the final straw that breaks the camel's back. I think you're going to have a lot of people on both sides of the aisle, all over the political spectrum, saying, wait a minute, we've got a government far out of control, and this is something we never expected we would be doing to American citizens.
Well, again, here's a piece in the London Telegraph, just hitchhiking what you were just saying, Kirby, talking there with Kirby Anderson of Point of View radio program. This is a piece written by Tim Stanley, but it's in the Telegraph in the UK. And the title of his piece, Barack Obama's national security state is now beyond Democratic control. Now, a lot of time, and this is a left-leaning newspaper in the UK, and the first line of the piece, the sheer number of scandals exposes Obama's inner authoritarianism. And it just kind of goes on from there. But even the left-leaning press in the UK is onto this deal. This guy is, they're basically saying this guy is a tyrant.
Out of control. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we have this growth of the fourth branch. My commentary today is from that Jonathan Turley piece that he wrote last week, which he's saying, if you don't like your senator, you don't like your congressman, you have a chance to keep them accountable. But here you have more and more rules being made by the executive branch, by the bureaucracy. They point out in one of the articles there that one year you had about 130 different bills passed by Congress, but you had 3,000 regulations during that same period of time promulgated by this executive branch. Likewise, you are 10 times more likely, Brian, to be called before an administrative court than an actual federal court. Well, you don't have any recourse to take a civil servant out. Look at Lois Lerner. Where's she right now? Well, she's getting paid.
Collecting her full paycheck somewhere on a beach somewhere.
I suppose. And, that just shows you why both liberals and conservatives are saying, wait a minute, maybe the federal government is too big. Maybe it is so unaccountable. And I suspect over the next couple of years, the president's not going to get much through. So he's going to try to work through the EPA, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Federal Trade Commission, maybe the FCC to take you off the air, all sorts of things through various kinds of executive orders. Because do you think he's got any kind of trust now? Do the American people trust him? Does his own party even trust him? A lot of people are wondering what is going to be the next scandal. What's the next shoe to drop from this administration?
Well, a couple other quotes from this Tim Stanley piece, Kirby, then I'll give you the last word. This is what he says. This is in the Telegraph in the London newspaper. First, America is so conscious and proud of its history as a beacon of liberty that it often overlooks the tyranny that occurs on its own shores in the name of safeguarding democracy. The national security state has expanded to the point whereby it now functions outside of democratic control and with clear disregard for the Constitution. That's the kind of stuff. We've been saying this for years, and they just called us wingnut wackos.
Yeah.
Now you've got left-wing libertarians saying exactly the same thing.
And again, that's one of those ones where you just let them keep preaching, we'll pass the offering plate. In a sense, what they're doing is saying what we've been saying for many years, and now we have documentation for it, and they're coming over to our side.
Well, I've got a piece here by Andy McCarthy who thinks this whole thing is being overblown. I got a lot of respect for Andy McCarthy.
I do too.
And he says the difference here is none of the content of these phone exchanges is being tapped. But he makes a point at the end of the piece, and I just want to finish with this. It goes back to what you were saying earlier about the importance of electing public officials that we trust. He says ultimately that's what this comes down to.
It is.
What this reveals is the American people do not trust this president, do not trust his administration. And when you've got the kind of power that's concentrated in the hands of our federal government, you've got to have people you can trust with their hands on the levers. Last word.
Well said. I would think that's exactly what we need to know. We need some surveillance to catch the bad guys, but not to actually intrude into our lives.
Guest Kirby Anderson, host of Point of View. Focal Point AFR Talk. We'll be right back after these words. Stay with us.